Okay, welcome everyone to our council meeting being held in council chambers on Tuesday, March 5th at 6:30 p.m. We are, as some of you know, testing out our new audiovisual system, which allows for much better hybrid participation. And to that end, we do welcome Councillor Doreen O'Sullivan, who's out of the country, but has been very devoted and dedicated to ensuring she makes as many meetings as possible. So Councillor O'Sullivan, I'm trusting that you're able to hear us. Is that right? Okay, maybe just unmute Councillor O'Sullivan so we know you're with us. While we wait for that, just before calling the meeting to order, I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of big developments, one of which is I was honored to be joined by my council colleagues, as well as the federal minister for youth, children and families, who was representing the federal minister of housing, Sean Fraser, to announce that we've been awarded $5.2 million to support North Grenville's ongoing efforts to create more attainable and affordable housing. 7 out of 8 municipalities did not receive funding from the Housing Accelerator Fund. It was extremely oversubscribed. So I think it's a testimony to all of the work that has been undertaken in the last 5 years that we were able to secure these dollars. And there's already an initial plan for how some of them will be expended. And Keena, if I'm not mistaken, there's a chart now on the North Grenville website that describes some of the key elements of the project. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we're really excited. It's a really special opportunity to have received these dollars, and we know that they'll be put to good use, and there's certainly more to be said. Secondly, just quickly, International Women's Day is coming up. There are 2 events happening in North Grenville, one of which is organized by the Leeds and Grenville Small Business Center on Thursday evening, really focused on entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. As well as here in North Grenville, a coalition of groups has come together with a little bit of support from the municipality to have a short but sweet International Women's Day event from 4 to 6 p.m. here in the community suites. And there'll be an opportunity to hear from 3 local and dynamic speakers, including Jan Ritzkes from Shalone Homes, Joelle Garneau, who presented to council just under a year ago and has gone from being Ms. Leeds and Grenville to Ms. Ontario. So she's been very effective at championing the region and now holds a provincial title. And the third person who will be speaking is Emily Harrington, a local social media influencer. So that's on a Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And there's more information on our website. And then finally, big congratulations to our 2023 Civic Award recipients. They were announced earlier today, and award recipients were notified yesterday. So we're extremely excited to celebrate them, and we look forward to a reception and a ceremony on Thursday, March 28th at 6:30 p.m. So with that, I will move to calling the meeting to order. And of course, I'll invite a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement, please. Land acknowledgement, council colleagues. Council Strachan, thank you.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. Moving on, we'll look to an approval of the agenda, and that is that the council agenda for the regular meeting on March 5th, 2024 be approved as presented. So looking for a mover and a seconder, council colleagues. Thank you. Of Councillor Wilson and Deputy Mayor Barclay, thank you. Any questions or concerns in regards to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. We can hear you now, Councillor O'Sullivan. Welcome. So you're hearing us okay?
It's a little low, but I can hear you.
Okay. And what time of day is it or night is it for you?
Very low.
Oh, she can't hear us. Okay. So Councilor Sullivan will continue to see if we can resolve the audio issue that I think makes it difficult for you to hear us. Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Okay, excellent. All right, so moving on, disclosures of interest, council colleagues, any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, I will therefore move into our presentations and delegations. And we're delighted this evening to welcome Nick Sully from WSP Canada. And he's here to present on an initiative or exploration of an initiative that was really born out of the pandemic, where there was an appetite on the part of the City of Ottawa and North Grenville to look at a rail trail extension. So we really look forward to your presentation, Mr. Sully. It's been a little while, and we know you'll have lots to say. So you want to turn on your mic because we can't hear you at all.
Is this better?
So much better.
Okay,
All
great.
right.
I've been in presentations where I have to like lean down to the mic some to be able to make it work, but this works great.
We have a state-of-the-art AV system now, so
Yeah, it's
I think
very
you're going to be
nice.
okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you everyone for having me here. Very excited to present on this project. This has been ongoing for the past, I think we started this up in 2023, this feasibility study project for a rail trail extension between Kemptville and Osgood in the City of Ottawa. If we want to go to the first slide, I'll present a bit of a background and look into the alternatives that we've developed and ultimately the preferred alternative and concept design that we've developed for this rail trail extension. This project is really almost a mashup of three different projects because we have the North Grenville segment that was originally within the scope of this project. And we've also been working on the City of Ottawa side as well. But we'll, for this presentation, I'll focus on the North Grenville side. And then towards the end of this project, there's a specific area that was added in afterwards. And that's between County Road 43 and County Road 19. And there'll be a bit of that towards the end of the presentation. So if we want to go to the next slide. This is the process that we largely followed here, developing a feasibility study and a concept design for that rail trail. To do this, we went through an evaluation and selection process, developing evaluation criteria based off of what consultation with the municipalities and determining who the main users is going to be of this trail. And that's focused largely on active users and trying to keep it open for some more recreational uses, consistent with the bylaws of the municipality, of the counties and the City of Ottawa for consistent users along the trail there. So let's go to the next slide. Here we can see the background and the limits of the site from a very high level. I'll have some more focused sections that we're looking at specifically throughout here. But mainly we're looking at the rail trail from County Road 43, extending north, crossing 416, and then continuing to this out of the municipal limits of North Grenville and to the City of Ottawa, where the City of Ottawa's portion has been included within this project as well. Next slide. Okay, so our key constraint, one of the key constraints that we had and most important sections that we had to look at within the municipality of North Grenville is how we were going to cross Highway 416. There were a lot of technical aspects to consider here. The trail as is a former rail alignment of a former CN corridor. So our initial alternative that we looked at here was how to keep the trail along that corridor, make it as direct as possible between the two communities, and have, I guess, a cost-effective crossing of Highway 416. The first alternative for crossing that we wanted to look at was an underpass. because there's a lot less construction with having to go under highway, while when you go over the highway, you have to have a much higher clearance for vehicles. So looking at that first alternative and looking at some background studies that we had from that CN corridor and the exploration of a rail bridge when the 416 was going through, we determined that there's very high water level, groundwater levels at the 416. So it ultimately ruled out feasible construction of an underpass, because you just have to be constantly pumping water out of the underpass for those users if that were to be built. So we ultimately landed on a bridge being really the only feasible alternative for crossing the 416. And we looked at multiple alignments here. Maintaining the existing alignment of the trail, the bridge has to be much longer because of the skew of the alignment and the MTO requirements for how far outside of the road lanes the supports for the bridge have to be. It ended up being so such high cost that we wanted to look at other alternatives, because even acquiring land and going through making that more perpendicular ended up being much more of a cost-effective solution. So our alternative that we came up with here, you can see the dashed blue line going up to the Flynn road allowance, and then the dashed yellow line ultimately being how we're going to connect from Flynn Road and the existing road allowance there across to tie back in with the existing rail corridor. This keeps the bridge more perpendicular with the highway and cuts off, I think, quite a significant amount of the cost of the bridge itself. And that dash blue running along the highway, it's within a parcel of land that the MTO owns. And we did consult with MTO on this, and they did discuss that they're open to a trail being on those lands and that they didn't have any future uses for it. So there'd be a permit process or land acquisition process for that. If we could go to the next slide. These were the evaluation criteria that we really wanted to use when discussing alternatives and how we're weighting those criteria to ultimately come up with our preferred solutions. So we have two columns here for two different weightings. The first, I guess on the left, the first column there, we have criteria, and then the second column for our first set of weightings, that was really used for almost everything except for the bridge. So when we come to road crossings along this corridor and along this trail, we wanted to take a look at these criteria for how we're going to evaluate those road crossings. Whereas the bridge weighting, the cost ended up being so significantly high that we wanted to put a much higher weighting on the construction costs for that one, because the minor road crossings are much significantly less costs than the bridge will be. So ultimately, that's how we came up with this alignment for the bridge, where a lot of our road crossings that you'll see are much more prioritized for the user comfort, how direct the crossing is going to be for the trail, and trying to minimize impacts to trees, to the environment within those road crossings. A lot of those road crossings also do end up being on the city of Ottawa side rather than on the North Grenville side. Whereas on the North Grenville side, they're pretty much along the alignment of the rail corridor. Can we go to the next slide? So yes, this is what I was talking about with the bridge. Ultimately, using those criteria, we determined that the bridge crossing on Highway 416 on the Flynn Road alignment was our preferred solution. Next slide. This was the other key section that falls within North Grenville limits of the project. So I said earlier that the main scope of the project was between County Road 43 and Village of Osgood. This section was brought in as an additional part to this project, and looking how to get users from County Road 43 to the existing terminus of the trail at Wellington Road and County Road 19. So There's the advantage that there's quite a lot of works going on within this area under the scope of the County Road 43 widening. So there will be an existing trail or multi-use pathway, I should say, going in on, I guess it's the south side of County Road 43 from Colonnade Drive and west that we'll be able to connect in with. The key thing within the County Road 43 project was there was not previously proposed a pedestrian crossing on the west leg of the roundabout at County Road 43 and Colonnade Drive. So we consulted with the roads engineer at the counties for this and ultimately agreed that it would be a good idea to include provisions for that pedestrian crossing to go in the future. So consulting with them and their engineer, they've agreed that they'll look into roughing in sort of the curb cuts and where those pedestrian crossover signs are going to go at that roundabout and protect that for the future construction of this trail. So it doesn't have to be rebuilt in however many years it is until this trail is built. Being consistent with the County Road 43 design, there are type C pedestrian crossovers going in at each of the roundabouts. So those are the pedestrian crossovers with the flashing beacons, the rectangular ones. And being consistent with that, that's what we're proposing at County Road 19 and Wellington Road as well, to give trail users priority and over vehicles while crossing at that location. We're also, another key factor here or thing that we're looking into here is potentially in the long term identifying that there's development on the north side of County Road 43. And within any development plans, proposing that there be some provisions for parking for trail users to be included, because this will be one of the major trailheads locations where trail users can park and take their bikes off their cars or any other purpose that they have for using the trail. And that's one of the recommendations coming out of this, if possible.
Can I just stop you?
Yeah.
So the establishment of that trailhead off of 43, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
presumes that we're actually able to render that unused portion of the rail trail usable, correct?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and did you do any analysis? Because I know the lands in there are quite wet. So was part of your analysis to look at the viability of actually making that trail more usable? I know it was a historic railway corridor, so I think much of it would be usable, but was there any assessment of that section of the trail?
There was a preliminary field assessment done.
By you guys?
It was by WSP.
Yeah.
It was mainly a site visit to assess the
Okay.
existing rail bed and make sure that it's still in working condition. We haven't done a full geotechnical study that would probably be required when you actually go to construction for this and more into detailed design. So this project is more feasibility level, making sure that a trail would fit within the area and that there's acceptable alternatives that would make this work.
Acceptable alternatives to the crossing at 416 in particular.
Crossing and these road crossings as well. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
like County Road 43 is these crossings that are something that we've considered as well.
From your perspective, because it's the, I guess, continuity of the rail trail that you were thinking about. Right? In terms of the existing North Granville Rail Trail versus this section that absolutely I think would be very valuable to have people use. But I just wanted to get your sense of the condition of that particular currently unutilized section of the rail trail.
We didn't do a full
Right.
detailed condition assessment of the rail trail. We just did those field walks and the site assessment for it. So a more detailed assessment would be required when it goes to detailed design.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, we could go to the next slide. So we've developed a couple renderings that we'd show here, just an idea of what that bridge is going to look like. So this was developed by our bridge engineer and our landscape designers as an idea of what that bridge would look like within the MTO right away. And I think on the next slide, we have renderings or some of the trail features actually. So what we're presenting for the trail width here, this is what a cross section would look like. Recommending a 3-meter wide limestone path along the rail corridor. And it's mainly to meet the existing widths of that rail bed. And next slide. Oh, and this was one of the key, this just wanted to highlight here, the recommendation for that parking again. Next slide. Okay, at some of the more minor trailhead locations, so Flint Road as an example, we've recommended some clusters and some minor trailhead features, including bike racks, providing some seating for using those areas and accessible concrete pads for anyone who might be looking to enjoy the trail who might not be able to or as mobile or able to walk. Next slide. Some more of the features that we're looking at along the trail. We've recommended at several locations, both using the North Grenville standard and the City of Ottawa standard for benches. And at some of the less important trailhead locations and at several locations along the trail itself, we would recommend Armorstone seating as an alternative and a less formal seating area as well. Next slide. We've recommended some lookout locations at key locations along the corridor. I think this lookout area that we're proposing here is at Gower Drive or Gower Road. And we're recommending trailhead signs throughout the corridor and trail distant markers to give people an idea of distances to key locations along the trail corridor. Next slide. And at more important trailhead locations, we're recommending some features such as bike repair stands to give anyone using the trail an opportunity to fix the flat tire or fix their chain or anything like that that they might experience along the trail. Bike rack locations, and then along the trail also recommending waste bins and pet waste bins as well. Next slide. So some of our next steps for the rail trail, there's very high costs associated, especially with the bridge and the 416. And it ultimately is a barrier to constructing the rest of the trail in the short term. There isn't really an alternative route to get around the 416 with many of the overpasses being county roads and MTO overpasses that are currently designed to their design standards, which don't provide too many facilities for cyclists or any other trail users. So we're recommending this that the municipality look and pursue for applications for external funding, especially for trails, any tourism opportunities that might support the case for constructing a bridge at this cost, because it can be quite a barrier because of the high cost of the bridge. Next slide. Okay, this was the small section between County Road 43 and County Road 19. Looking into this as there is that segment of the trail that goes on to private land and through the Kevlar development, which is on the left here, and how we're trying to look at improving pedestrian connectivity between the two developments, and also how these are going to tie into the trail on either side of the development. Next slide. So we've come up with several options for how pedestrians are going to be able to move between the two sites. The aerial imagery is a bit old here. The Kevlar side is much more developed. So we came up with a few different alternatives that we can propose, and then realizing that there's another option that's upcoming that will be constructed as part of the County Road 43 project. So option 1 here, there's an existing desire line between the back of the Canadian Tire and the plaza to the west. It is at a bit of a slope, and the slope as is isn't completely accessible. So this ended up being an alternative that we wanted to discuss as an option, but it would likely need stairs and wouldn't be completely accessible for all users. And recognizing that it's going to be within our recommended plan, but it won't be the key connection that will provide pedestrian connectivity between the two sites. Option 2 that we were looking at was the option of a pedestrian bridge a bit further up. The location for option 1 is a bit constrained on the east side because there's no existing pedestrian sidewalks or pathways on that side. So we're looking for a better location that would get pedestrians the option to use some of the existing pedestrian facilities on the Colonnade development to the east. So a pedestrian bridge would ultimately be required here because there's an existing stormwater management linear facility that's separating the two sites. So without impacting the stormwater management and the amount of runoff coming from those sites, we can't really regrade that area to create a more, I guess, cost-effective solution. So ultimately, a pedestrian bridge, which does come at a higher cost, would be the only reasonable option for a bit further north on the site. Option 3 that we're presenting on here is to extend the sidewalk from Ryan's Well Drive up on the east side of County Road 19, which again isn't the most direct solution for getting pedestrians between the two sites. And then option 4 is, well, it's being constructed as part of the County Road 43 widening project. There'll be that multi-use pathway going in on the south side of County Road 43 and on the west side of Colonnade Drive. Next slide. So here are a couple of locations that I was just speaking about. So photo 1 there is the Desire line that pedestrians already seem to be using between Canadian Tire and the Kevlar development.
Can you tell me, sorry, what is a desire line?
You can see in this photo here, it's where there's a beaten track
I see.
going through the grass, and there's so many pedestrian and people walking on those that it forms a line through the grass
It's
essentially.
effectively an informal, to your point,
Yes.
way of
yeah,
people
it's
getting,
informal.
right,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So people are already using it. So that's why we're suggesting formalizing that with a more formal facility. It reduces the risk of people using that, essentially going through that ditch and up the slope by giving them stairs as an alternative instead. The second location or photo that we've shown here is that linear stormwater management facility. As you can see, it's quite deep. It's not really, a pedestrian can't really walk through there as is right now because of the state of it. And it has to be maintained to meet stormwater management requirements for the site. So that would be the preferred location approximately from almost right behind that waste bin on the right side of the photo to the opposite side where you can see that small transformer there for a pedestrian bridge instead. Next slide. So our recommendations for this, we've broken them up into sort of short-term, medium-term, and sort of the long-term solution that's being implemented as County Road 43. So our recommendation for the short-term within the municipality's control is to build this extension of the sidewalk on County Road 19 from Ryan's Well Drive up to the entrance. Option 1, we're recommending in the medium term for the pedestrian crossing along the Desire line. We did consult with property owners on both sides from Kevlar and Colonnade, as well as Canadian Tire. We didn't, through our meetings with them, we didn't receive formal commitment on or any formal preference stated from them for any of these options. So this one being on the private side, there would be more consultation with the property owners required for that. And then option 4, it's being implemented on the county schedule for the County Road 43 widening. So that will provide a more formal pedestrian connection. It's not the most direct, but it will be coming. Next slide. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about this project, I'm happy to take them now.
Okay, I'll start taking a speakers list and I'll put myself near the end. Councillor Strakian, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just to clarify, the look and feel of the trail and the North Grenville up to Osgood portion is meant to be similar to what's already from the Osgood heading north portion. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's supposed to be similar in style, similar in design. It's more of a granular trail base. We're keeping it open to sort of the same users that they have that trail open to heading north in the Ottawa section as well, and trying to be consistent with what North Grenville permits as well.
Okay, it's just to get it in my mind, because I'm familiar with that section, is that it's, it winds up being a hard pack, basically gravel trail that's wide enough for two bikes to pass each other, or two strollers to pass each other, or something like that. Like if it's that similar kind of feel, that's effectively what we would see here.
Exactly. It's not going to be loose gravel or anything. It will be hard packed, like you say.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, and I will recognize Councillor Sullivan. I see you on the screen now. Councillor Sullivan, can I have Councillor Sullivan go next? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan. I'm hoping we can hear you.
Okay,
Yep. we
thank
got
you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the presenter, and I'm sorry I didn't catch his name. I have a couple of questions. One is the connection from the rail trail where it ends currently at County Road 19 and Wellington, further across to County Road 43 on the north side, the section that goes behind Kevlar property, do we own that, or does Kevlar own that? Is it an easement? Are we going to always have that connection available to us? That's one question. And when you talked about connecting between the Kevlar property and Colonnade, option 3 to formalize that sidewalk was only going to be on the east side of County Road 19, which means that people who are on the west side, unless they get to Ryan's Well Road, have no way of safely crossing County Road 19. And option 4, if that is part of County Road 43, would that not be happening sooner than later? Because the first two options had 0 to 2 years or 3 to 5, I think. So if option 4 is part of County Road 43 development, then that would be happening faster than either of those other two, if I understand correctly. And did I already mention, would there be cost sharing of the bridge if and when that happens with the City of Ottawa? Thanks.
Maybe I can turn.
Sorry.
Okay, we were going to ask Ms. Dunlop about the, I think, proposed plans for County Road 43, where there is a proposed MUP. And I don't know if that's on the Canadian Tire side, Ms. Dunlop, or on the other side. So perhaps you could fill in a little bit of color about what's expected here.
Thank you, Your Worship. The County Road 19 and the 43 MUP expansion is planned for the west side, which is the Giant Tiger side of County Road 19. What this is proposing is an addition or an expansion from Ryan's Well up to the existing access point behind the Starbucks. The other question, if I may, is whether or not that pathway and stormwater facility is owned by the municipality. According to GIS, yes, it is, but there are certain agreements in place because of the development for the stormwater, which is maintained in perpetuity by the commercial development. So yes, we own the land, but there are some restrictions. Of course, it's always an option to open up those agreements and move forward additional maintenance.
And are you speaking of the stormwater facility between the properties, or are you speaking of the side of the road where the sidewalk is being proposed from Ryan's Well?
Your Worship, I'm talking about the section of the former rail trail that was developed as part of the Starbucks site. And there is a gravel pathway, the cedar rail, and then the hybrid wet sweat.
So that's where we are limited in our jurisdiction. Is that what I'm hearing?
We are limited in land access because of the width of the available lands, the existing parking and the existing ditch.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we looked into this site plan application for the Kevlar development. And what was included in that site plan agreement was a dedication for, it was called a community pathway allowance.
Right.
So it ends up being just 1.5 meters from the back of the curb of the existing parking and then 1.5 meters back from there. And there's an existing pathway allowance along the entire length of that site, plus a small location sort of right in that area of where the Desire line is going up to the Canadian Tire. But that pathway allowance doesn't exist on the other site, on the Canadian Tire site, because it was developed earlier. And then the Kevlar site was developed. So that community pathway allowance, there would have to be some sort of an agreement with the Canadian Tire site if for that option to go through.
And we've already understood from Canadian Tire that they're currently not comfortable with a connection where I think you're saying the Desire line or the informal pathway is because of some liability concerns. So as a consequence, we force people to walk County Road 19 or to walk out to County Road 43 and find their way to the back end of Colonnade, in part because of liability concerns that basically create more risk. So did you have more success in your conversations with Colonnade or Canadian Tire in regards to this matter?
We didn't with Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire was the main voice of concern, especially with their trucks and their loading trucks in that area. The recommendation that we made is largely based off of pedestrians are already using that Desire line. You can see that there's already demand. So formalizing that would still reduce some of the risk that is being presented just by using that informal slope. Pedestrians are already going through their park and
Can you see a way to reduce the risk for property owners like Canadian Tire, who I understand legitimately, right, don't want to create vulnerabilities for pedestrians who may not be necessarily expecting to see a lot of activity when it comes to loading trucks, but do you see a way around that?
It's definitely understandable from the Canadian Tire side. What we recommend in other projects, especially when there's conflicts between trucks and pedestrians within an area, is for the programming of when those deliveries are coming to recommend that the deliveries come at off-peak times, when you wouldn't expect pedestrians to be using that area. Of course, this creates more costs on the Canadian Tire side, right? So it could end up being something that they could be opposed to. I don't want to speak for them. The manager who was at the Canadian Tire side ended up, I think he was retiring right around this time too. So we didn't receive any formal comments through them because I think he retired just before, right when we were having that meeting with him actually. So we haven't heard anything back from Canadian Tire at this point.
All right, other questions in regards to? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I'm not sure whether Councillor O'Sullivan's, all her questions were addressed.
Councillor Sullivan? Were your questions answered?
Yes, they were, except would there be cost sharing of the bridge with the city of Ottawa if that was to proceed at some time?
It was something that was discussed at a very preliminary level.
We don't have a costing of the bridge. So we have a PowerPoint. I don't know if you provided a more fulsome report to both municipalities, but all we have is access to your PowerPoint. So I don't even know what the costing, the preliminary costing for the bridge was.
Our report was sent over, I believe, our final report. Was that circulated?
I don't think it's part of our package tonight.
No?
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we're missing some actually of your key analyses, including the potential costing of the bridge. So can you give us a sense of the preliminary estimates for that bridge? And perhaps through you, Ms. Preston, we can get access to the full report?
The bridge cost estimates were very preliminary.
Sure.
This didn't go through a detailed
No, we
bridge
understand.
cost or design. So the preliminary costs on the alignment of the existing rail trail was around 7.5 million. And along the Flynn Road alignment, it reduced it down to 5 million by reducing the length of the bridge.
So the very preliminary, totally understand.
Yeah,
Um,
it's sort of a
costing is,
comparison of similar bridges.
is
That's what we're
approximately
doing.
5 million
Yes,
for a pedestrian facility.
for the pedestrian bridge.
That would
itself.
create that extended connection into basically that would bring us, well, we connect both the city of Ottawa and the municipality effectively,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that doesn't, I mean, certainly that number is not shocking to me, but nor does it seem insurmountable. I think you were contracted by both the city of Ottawa and the municipality of North Granville, right, to explore options. Has the city of Ottawa formally responded or provided written comment, or have you presented to the city of Ottawa yet?
So we're not presenting to the City of Ottawa Council for
Okay.
this. This is going through their pedestrian and cycling
Gotcha. Yeah.
branch at the city.
And has that
Uh,
happened yet?
Yes, so we had a contact from that branch on all of our project meetings. He was involved all the way throughout it. So consultants here, we
Yes.
were paid by both the City of Ottawa and by North Grenville. So it really was a joint project that is being explored by both cities, or by both municipalities, I should say.
So at this stage, any efforts to secure external grants, what have you, for that pedestrian bridge remain to be seen?
Yeah, there haven't been any grant applications
Right.
submitted yet.
Or any
And to my
commitment by
knowledge.
either municipality to go in that direction?
No, there hasn't been.
Okay, all right, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I think you were midway through some questions.
Yeah, and I think you asked most of them, because my questions were around the city of Ottawa involvement. So what I'm familiar with is a D-class estimate, so that $5 million is plus or minus 50%. Is that how you'd characterize that?
There's probably a very healthy margin of error for
Okay.
those, yes. Nothing like that.
And you mentioned that this presentation was brought to the pedestrian cycling. Is that staff or is that a committee of
It's staff.
council?
It's a staff
So
department at City of Ottawa.
no one on council has seen this presentation yet?
No,
On
they
the
haven't.
Ottawa.
We're not preparing a presentation for them.
Yeah.
The report has been submitted to the City of Ottawa. I'm not sure how exactly their process works. I think it's based off of their boards and based off of their councilors that they push for certain projects to go through.
Mhm.
And this was a project that was identified within their transportation master plan. So it's something that the
Staff is very familiar with, but maybe not
Staff and
any
coun-
councils.
and council should probably be fairly familiar with it. I think they did approve the projects for the transportation.
It would be helpful to know what Ottawa councillor is directly related to that,
It's
the area
George,
where.
it's George Theroux.
Is it?
So
Okay,
in
great.
fact, he facilitated the early meetings among staff during the pandemic from both the city of Ottawa and our own municipality,
That's great.
which was the catalyst for the study. So I understand the
I don't have all the
connection
background, but
points
yeah,
are
sorry.
different
Yeah.
for both municipalities because it was through their active transportation plan that Councillor Theroux did approach the municipality about jointly pursuing funds for a feasibility study, which allowed for this particular endeavor. So that is our point of contact. And maybe, Mr. Guy, you have more to add because I presume you oversaw some of this effort alongside WSP.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, myself and Ryan Bro, who's no longer with the municipality, were part of the project. And I just wanted to point out that we did receive, as did the City of Ottawa, $50,000 each through the Federal Active Transportation Program to complete this feasibility study.
And so you would be in possession of the full report that I think would detail in a more fulsome manner the findings of WSP, is that right?
Yes, I do have
Okay.
that, and I will send that through.
Okay. So I guess what we're dealing with is how to, just in summary for my own edification, we have an unused portion of a rail trail that is in our jurisdiction on lands that we own, which obviously extend from just I think Boundary Road, if I'm not mistaken, right? From the outer reaches of
There we go.
Yeah.
There are some segments
Right.
on the north side of Highway 416 that are actually owned by the city of Ottawa.
Gotcha.
When that rail corridor was being sold, they bought up the entire section, but I think there were conversations that they would be open to transferring that land back to the
Ah.
municipality. Yeah.
Okay. So the city of Ottawa was sort of thinking ahead and thinking strategically about use of that rail corridor for pedestrian and cycling connectivity, clearly, and I guess snowmobiles, right, in the winter, for sure. So we have an unutilized portion, right, of a rail trail, some of which is owned by the city of Ottawa, some of which is owned by the municipality, and I understand from Ms. Dunlop, some of which is owned by private landowners. So we have that. We also have the challenge of getting people across the 416. And then you also contemplated the connectivity potentially from the rail trail that would abut 43 through kind of Ryan's Well, right? And the Kevlar properties. So you sort of had three different things happening in terms of the study. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the three projects pretty much
Yes.
smushed together. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And at this stage, we're receiving information about what you would propose, recognizing that there are some financial limitations to pedestrian connectivity over the 416. And I guess, Ms. Dunlop, can you just speak a little bit more to where if we chose to activate the unused portions of the rail trail that are in our jurisdiction, I understand they wouldn't go all the way to 43, that we have another property owner that holds a small portion of that rail trail?
Yes, your worship, you're correct. There is that one portion formerly known as Rosewater, now owned by someone else, that when a development proposal comes forward, we would look to secure those lands.
And when you say someone else, are you unable to disclose who that someone else is?
Off the top of my head, I believe it's Montreal
Best carrier.
Best Carriers. Thank you very much.
And could we not approach Montreal Best Carrier in advance if we wanted to open up that section of the rail trail? Do we have to wait for a development proposal that may or may not come in the next decade?
Thank you for the question, your worship. Typically, if we go to them ahead of time, unless they're willing to provide that in lieu of any future development, it can cost us money. When they come forward with the development, we have much more opportunity and availability at a lower cash option, but it's always something that staff could do, and we could reach out to see if we could get that connectivity from 43 northerly to the 416, which is where the city of Ottawa then owns the rail trail to the east side.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And I recognize Councillor Sullivan again. Her hand is up. And I don't see any of their hands here, so I'll recognize Councillor Sullivan. Go ahead. And
Okay, thank you, Madam
there you
Mayor. Through you to the consultant. When way back in the beginning of your slide presentations, there were options without using the bridge, without having the bridge across 416. And I think they involved Flynn Road and some other way to get across 416. Perhaps it was on Van Buren, I'm not sure. But what are the options to get to make this connection without having the bridge built or the underpass?
We did explore early on some short-term options on how we could connect with the city of Ottawa's own portion on the other side of the 416. Ultimately, they are quite difficult. So we did look at River Road, County Road 19 as an option using the overpass there. The MTO did express their concerns about that, with cyclists pretty much having to share the lane with vehicles. And we sort of ruled that out because of the safety concerns there. And I think they also had some comments about if cyclists were to use the shoulders, the sides would have to be raised up. There'd have to be a bit higher than the guards on the existing guards on the overpass there for protecting cyclists. And then the other option that we looked at was using County Road 43 and detouring around the other side of the highway, which ultimately also has its concerns with using County Road 43 because it's it's within the county's active transportation plan for there to eventually be paved shoulders on that section over there. That would provide an option for cyclists. When that is going to happen isn't something that we could say. So ultimately, we're not sure if that's going to fall within the sort of time frame that we're looking at as a connection over.
And where are those proposed paved shoulders on the county road in question? You're talking about River Road?
So River Road was one option.
Yeah.
That's County Road 19,
Yes.
County Road 43. That would be going, I think, east across the highway there. And it's currently tight on the overpass, on the highway overpass there too. So that would have to be widened to add those paved shoulders.
Gotcha. Okay.
Did-
Councillor Strachan?
If I may, did you
Oh, I'm
look
so
at an
sorry.
option?
Yes. Go ahead, Doreen.
Thank you. Did you look at an option of having a pathway cantilevered off the side of an existing bridge that could be used and would be probably much less expensive than a complete standalone pedestrian or cycling bridge?
We didn't look at that as an option. Typically, we don't see that as something that the MTO permits on their overpasses. I can't really think of another example where that has been done by MTO.
Well, thinking outside the box, I'm currently in New Zealand and they do a lot of creative things in here in this country to promote cycling. So maybe it's something that could be explored.
For sure. Thank you. We can certainly note that. I'll just recognize Councillor Strachan now before wrapping it up. Go ahead, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. And as a general comment, as somebody who lives on the other side of the tracks, AKA the other side of the 416, you know, adding cantilever or any additional paved shoulders on bridges and so on isn't going to solve the problem of those roads being extremely busy. And I have attempted to cycle with my own children from that end of North Grenville into Kempville. And there are no safe routes simply because of the volume of traffic on the roads. And I don't think any amount of paving shoulders will really help those circumstances. It won't change anything there. So I appreciate the thought that's gone into finding a way to go across the 416 using the rail trail. Likewise, I've seen what the rail trail offers from Osgood heading north, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for people to be very active, use active transportation as a way to get to and from. And the direct route of that rail trail actually makes it a much shorter trip as well, and a flatter route. So I think it's great to look at the costs, and I think that's, you know, needs to be explored. But the safety, the overall safety of the routes that would be used by using existing bridges, I think would be questionable in my mind, just based on my own experience. Thank you.
Okay, well, lots to think about here. Thank you very much for the deep dive into many aspects of rail trail connectivity. It's complex, no doubt, but I know that I think as a council and as a community, the rail trail is very well embraced. And if there was a way to extend it safely, I take Councillor Strachan's point, River Road, County Road 19 is extremely busy. It will only get busier. I would not feel safe biking on those shoulders, and I have as well. So hopefully we can actually pursue with the City of Ottawa an opportunity to potentially build that pedestrian bridge. So I know it's likely something that this council would want to pursue should funding exist. So lots to work with here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think council, just this evening, we're being asked to receive the report. Is that correct? Ms. Preston? Okay. And I know that we're not in receipt of the most fulsome document. So we look forward to getting that because it'll have some color and texture that we don't currently have. So maybe I'll just look for a council resolution in regards to receipt of the information provided in the delegation from WSP. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Wilson, Councillor Strachan. Thank you. That's awesome. We appreciate that. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Will we have a chance, once we see the full report, of addressing it somehow?
I think we can bring it back
Yeah,
anytime
thank
at our discretion. So Absolutely. I think as we contemplate our own enhancements to active transportation, this is clearly front and center. So absolutely. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you again. Safe travels. And next, we're moving to items under the consent agenda. Of course, these are considered routine and no longer require further discussion, unless, of course, any member of council wishes to pull an item to be considered separately. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda as presented. And of course, if council colleague wishes to pull an item, they're more than welcome to do so. I'll look for a mover and a seconder then for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll need a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, thank you. And if there is a consensus around proceeding with the consent items as proposed, I'll call the question. All in favor? All right, that passes. Thank you. Next, we'll go to, of course, without further ado, our 2024 municipal budget. And we've had several kicks at this can, forgive the metaphor, but at this time, I think Ms. Dunlop is bringing a final draft budget in a fairly condensed presentation for our consideration this evening. So thank you, Ms. Dunlop, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So good evening all, and thank you for attending the final presentation of the proposed 2024 municipal budget. The budget presentation has been modified to provide highlights such as further definitions of the current municipal debt and amendments for the tax-based operating and capital. Next slide. Here is the agenda for this evening, which includes the proposed budget amendments and carryovers. Next slide. The next 3 slides we've seen before. They're in regards to the goals and objectives. The North Grenville team plan to continue to improve service delivery by reviewing policies. Mine is not the same as yours.
Do we have the right version of the presentation uploaded? Perhaps not. Why don't we take a couple of minutes to sort that out so Ms. Dunlop can be on the right track?
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
I can't hear any.
Okay, I think the technical challenge has been sorted, and Ms. Dunlop, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're now on slide 3, which is goals and objectives. As I said, the next 3 slides are ones that you've seen before. In regards to the North Grenville team plan to continue to improve service delivery by reviewing policies and bylaws, update our strategic plan and multiple master planning documents. Next slide. We plan to continue to digitize municipal records and building permit processes, plus provide for better visual participation in council and committee meetings, as has been started in the chambers. Next slide. We plan to improve our project planning through online management, programming, refreshing master plans such as the fire department, transfer station, and emergency management HIRA. Next slide. The next 2 slides are the municipality's commitment to investing in our community through the community grant program, community support program, long-term, and healthcare. Next slide. Community development, signature events, and cultural items. Next slide. The summary of the 2024 proposed operating budget provides for a 3.96% municipal tax increase and will provide an overview of the operational departments in the coming slide. The revenue for the municipal government is primarily through municipal property taxes, although we do receive formula-based grants for certain purposes from higher levels of government, which are embedded within the budget. Next slide. This slide identifies the unaudited position of the municipal reserves for the year end 2020 through 2022. Next slide. The proposed taxation increase for the municipal component of the property tax is 3.96, which above growth will provide an increase of just over $691,000. Next slide. The municipality also accumulates debt for larger and long-term items. The next 2 slides demonstrate the current debt, amount borrowed, end date, annual payments, and outstanding balances. Next slide. Included is the campus mortgage, which is paid by the reserve fund created in 2018. Next slide. Proposed budget amendments included in this presentation are the addition of an amount for the new PXO, a Blue Communities Initiative, a change and expansion in the MUP program, which is the multi-paths, additional hour during the week for the NG Transit, some advisory committee support, and the addition of a gravel road rebuild. Next slide. The property tax rate has 3 components: education, county, and municipal. There is no indication of an increase in the educational component. The United Counties is currently going through their budget deliberations and has indicated a proposed rate of 6.28%, along with the municipal proposed increase at 3.96. Next slide. The tax bill does not all go to the municipality. Although we collect the property tax bills at the municipality, we send 12% for education and 35% to the county, which leaves 53% for residential front-facing municipal government operations. A 3.96 municipal increase represents $99 on the average $400,000 dwelling. Next slide. This slide identifies the operating budget carryovers for the Public Works and Corporate Services Division. Next slide. This completes the operations. Now we move on to capital. Next slide. Capital overview provides total expected expenses of a little over $9.2 million, which is broken down by department. And next slide, by funding sources. Next slide. The next 4 slides highlight the capital program by department. We can pause if there are questions. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. Every year, there are projects that we do not get completed due to the fact they are multiple year projects, supply issues, or lack of resources. The next two slides include the capital projects that have been carried over into 2024, and they bring the funding source with the project. They include engineering studies and designs, construction projects that did not get completed, or we are waiting for grant confirmation. Next slide. The total value of the carry forward capital items is a little over $1.8 million. Next slide. This completes my presentation, and we are all here and happy to answer any questions.
Council colleagues, any questions in regards to this last iteration of our draft budget?
I do.
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand up fast enough. I do have a question, a couple of questions, but one is in the amounts of community supports that are not within the community grant requests. We have a specific number for the Beth Donovan Hospice, and it is a specific amount, whereas all of the others are rounded amounts. And I'm wondering, is it for a specific request that Beth Donovan brought forward to council? I don't recall any specific request from them. I guess this would be to
I actually do remember their initial request, which was to offset the costs of some of their counseling programs that, as I understand, allow for families in the community to access bereavement support. It's largely a volunteer-led program, but there is some training and other costs to the attached to the delivery of that program. And I believe that we initially allocated them as some of the support that's still there in the 15,759 a number of years ago, and that same amount has been allocated, I think, likely for 4, if not 5 years. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
I think their specific request at the time, Councillor Sullivan, was very precise in terms of the numbers, whereas some of our other discussions and some of the other requests we've received have been obviously ones where they've rounded the numbers a little more than the Beth Donovan Hospice.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a second question regarding the Enbridge courtyard and some of the activities and expenses around updating Riverside Park. I know that we received $50,000 from Enbridge, which was a very generous community donation that we really appreciate. And I'm just wondering, was there additional money in the budget for some additional equipment for that courtyard over and above the 50,000 we were getting from Enbridge?
Ms. Scribe, would you like to answer this? I think you may have provided an answer to a similar question in our last meeting, but go ahead.
Sure. Through you, your worship, to Councillor O'Sullivan. We do have $50,000 for the Enbridge courtyard through the donation from Enbridge. There is no additional funds for the Enbridge courtyard. We are currently in the process of pricing out some shade structures as well as some portable basketball standards. We plan on purchasing some park benches as well as part of that courtyard, along with a sign that will state to people using the park that it is this courtyard was for the generous donation of Enbridge. So we fully expect that the $50,000 will cover the things that we want to do there to create the courtyard.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. And so the exercise equipment that we're hoping to put around the multi-use path or within the courtyard would be, we have that in the budget for 2024?
For you again, your worship, to Councillor O'Sullivan, the outdoor exercise fitness equipment as part of the pathway, as part of the Riverside Park Pathway project, but not the Enbridge courtyard project.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thanks very much.
just quickly, I know we had this discussion last time, Mr. Guy. I understand, so I had envisioned the courtyard a little bit differently. What you were suggesting is there will be sort of seasonal umbrellas, large umbrellas that will have seating underneath to provide that shade. Is that the structures you have in mind?
Thanks for the question, Your Worship. It will be a permanent shade structure that we're looking at.
Okay.
The ones that we're currently looking at as a possibility would have a tarp type of shade on the top that we would remove in the winter time.
Okay, okay. So then they stay in place, but in the event of a thunderstorm or a wind event, would they come down then, obviously? No,
No, they would not.
okay.
Th-
So they're
it-
intended to endure through all
Yes.
weather conditions,
Just-
et cetera?
That's correct.
And the seating underneath, will there be seating or are people expected to bring their own chairs? What's the plan there?
What we're looking at right now, the expectation would be that we would either put some picnic tables under there or people would bring their own seating.
Right, so some picnic tables potentially.
Correct.
And how many people do you think, just given the very limited shade in Riverside Park, and I believe I asked this the last time, but just because Councillor O'Sullivan has opened the door, how many
Yeah.
people do you think could probably be well accommodated under those shade structures?
The structures that we're considering, and we will be bringing them to some of our committees of council for comment, are a 12 by 12 structure. So depending on, you could probably either get a couple of picnic tables underneath them or potentially, 6 to 8 lawn type of chairs would be my
So
thought.
you're thinking approximately 2 picnic tables, is that right? If we use picnic tables?
That's correct.
Is that per structure or for the entire courtyard?
No, that would be per structure.
And there are 2 proposed?
We are considering 2 at this time.
So I would just suggest, given how popular that park will be, and it's likely going to be even more popular with the splash pad this summer, I wonder strategically if it would be valuable to go beyond certainly the number that's been proposed. Of course, I know we're working within the Umbridge envelope or potentially to have a plan to add a couple of more, over the next couple of years. I think these will be highly sought after shade structures, and I do worry about them providing a little bit of shade to a very small number of people who are using the park. So perhaps that's something to consider as you plan for the long term. The trees that have been planted are going to take many, many more years before they replace the shade that obviously was at Riverside some time ago.
Certainly we'll take all of that into consideration.
Right, thank you. Doreen,
I
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Guy. I'm actually using my time here in New Zealand to do a lot of exploring of things that they have here. And actually a cousin is a landscape architect who has just done some fabulous work on waterfront in 2 different towns in New Zealand. As you know, the sun is a problem here because it's got the biggest hole in the ozone down here. And shade structures are very prevalent. They have a number of structures that are like a sail. And I believe that they would be fairly easy to put in Kemptville or in the Enbridge courtyard. And perhaps they may have to be taken down in the wintertime, but then put back up in the summer. So I'm going to bring lots of photos home, and I know Director Guy likes it when I go around and take pictures of different things. So I think that might be something that we could explore.
I think given the heat and the fact that the reality is our summers are only going to get hotter and hotter, we're going to need to really actively incorporate more shade into all of our public parks. So I think definitely something to consider as we move forward. Councillor Sullivan, is there anything else that you wanted to raise in regards to the budget?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Council colleagues, anything else in regards to the budget as presented this evening? Seeing nothing, then I'll look for a motion that council approve the 2024 draft municipal operating and capital budgets, please.
I will.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Strachian. Any last comments or questions in regards to what's on the table now? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I think this, through you, Madam Mayor, to Ms. Dunlop. I'm hoping that sometime in the future, we'll see some sort of 4-year financial forecast, plug in some numbers so we know our way forward.
Yes.
Through you, your worship. Yes, we will be looking at, as we hopefully will be more than full staffed or full staffed at least when we start the 2025 budget. Yes, that is the intent. Also, as part of the Treasury and Finance Plan moving forward through 2024, we hope to get council quarterly or more frequent financial updates in regards to year-to-dates and where we sit. So that absolutely will be the plan moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I will call the question then. All in favor, please. All right. That carries.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Dunlop. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. And thank you to Ms. Dunlop and her team. I know you worked hard during a difficult period of transition between an outgoing finance director and some new staff who've joined us, including our Deputy Director of Finance, Mr. David Delaney. So appreciate that it was all hands on deck and look forward to getting some of those tenders out the door so we can get going, and appreciate all of your dedication and devotion to our 2024 budget. So colleagues, we will move on then. We have nothing else under Parks, Rec and Culture. Under Planning and Development, of course, we've just approved via the consent agenda the Oxford Village Subdivision Draft Plan Extension. However, I know, Councillor Sullivan, you did want to ask a question, and I think it's fair to do so. Obviously, the motion is carried, but if you have a question in regards to the subdivision, feel free to do so now. We have Ms. Martin here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to, is Director Martin present?
Yes, she is.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, because I can't see.
No problem at all.
So regarding the Oxford Village, as you know, we've granted extensions to the developer on a fairly ongoing basis for the development. And I realized that draft approval was granted, but there's been significant changes to the nature of the whole development from, I believe initially it was going to be pretty much all single family homes, and now it's much higher density of homes. And for that reason, I think that we really need to encourage and if we can request or make it a condition that there be parkland in there for a children's playground, etc., given the high density and obviously the smaller lots for homes to be built on, as well as I believe that developers have a responsibility for the necessary infrastructure that's required going with their developments. And again, given that the initial draft approval was many years ago for this development, I'm wondering if we can again add some requests or conditions that would have them contribute to infrastructure for active transportation so that this new community can be connected to the rest of the municipality or the rest of the urban area in Kemptville. So those are my two concerns. I'm wondering if we can do that based on this request for another extension.
And certainly before maybe recognizing Ms. Martin and then possibly Ms. Dunlop, who I think has more information about pathway connections on County Road 43. I would like to say that I did have the opportunity to meet Mattamy, and they gave me an update on the preliminary sales of their homes. They have reported that townhomes seem to be selling the fastest. And in that regard, it's great to see that they have a lot of townhomes on offer. In the context of that conversation, however, I did express, I think, council strong interest in potentially seeing a neighborhood park in that subdivision. And maybe Ms. Martin or Ms. Dunlop, you can speak to what I understand is an opportunity to construct a municipal play structure or play area on some municipal lands that have been offered to the municipality alongside a commitment by Mattamy to potentially construct the play area. So Ms. Martin, I don't know if you want to re-summarize what I believe is our current understanding of where things stand with 338 or 383 homes rather going into that subdivision. The reality is, I believe that families and new residents do need a place to gather within the subdivision itself. So I'm hopeful that some of those conversations can materialize into that commitment. Can you speak more to that, Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to address Councillor Sullivan's request in regards to adding additional conditions. It's council's prerogative at any time to revisit conditions if they should choose to do so in regards to plans of subdivisions. However, I would highly recommend against doing that at this stage, just given to the fact that we're at the point where we are issuing conditional permits for the development and we're close to registration. And so to entertain additional conditions at this time in the game could be seen as being in bad faith and could open us up to some litigation. In regards to the parkland piece, it's something that certainly we can continue those discussions with Mattamy to see if there's opportunities to have a play structure installed within the development. There are some lands that are available that staff are working to identify to see if it's appropriate to have some play structure equipment there. And as the condition of approval originally granted in 2017, a large block of land, which is the wetland, was the parkland dedication. There will also be passive trails around that for recreation purposes as well. But in discussions, as Your Worship has alluded to, there was some willingness and interest on the part of Mattamy to look at enhancing that piece as part of the development. 198 residential dwelling units.
Certainly, I think actually the decision to actually make this happen now rests with the municipality to recognize those lands as being valuable for the purposes of a play structure. My understanding from Mattamy is they are fully committed to the establishment of the play structure. They have no issue in terms of the modest, very modest financial investment. But it's really now up to us, and maybe Ms. Dunlop, you can speak to whether or not you would envision that the municipal.
Your Worship, I would think as part of the discussions that the Planning and Building Department have with Mattamy as this development of OVI proceed, that the offer, shall I call it that, is above and beyond their commitment. But yes, it is a discussion that we will have. I think that we will make sure that the Planning Department, I believe, knows and feels of what council's preferences in regards to recreational facilities, tot lots, play structures within communities, within North Granville as the bigger community are. And so we will continue down that path. I do not think that we need any additional direction unless you wish to provide it.
I think my only question is if the developer has offered to pay for the play facilities and the fulfillment of that offer rests on the provision of municipal land, am I hearing from staff that we can make that happen? Okay, so there's no reason that this offer by Mattamy wouldn't be honored at this stage.
At this point, I mean, we're taking the conversation with Mattamy on their word as to what they would like to do. And certainly it was indicated in a meeting with Mattamy that it's something that they see as value to their development and to their future residents. So we can certainly have those discussions to see if we can include it within the subdivision agreement, which has yet to be executed.
Certainly that would be helpful. Go ahead, Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Martin, just to confirm, when you're speaking of the lands that could be used for parks or for playground structure, these are lands that are not the ones that are designated as wetland. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Strachan, that is correct. So the lands that, so I can see a little better. So the lands that are identified are, there's about 1 or 2 acres up near where the municipal well has been constructed. That could potentially be a location as to where they are located.
Great question. So thank you. I'm sure you're wearing your other hat, but I too had that in my mind, but thankfully there is a little bit of municipal land near the well. So I think what I've heard from Mattamy and what you would have heard and Ms. Dunlop heard is there is an appetite and value in establishing a park. We have the developer who's willing to pay for the actual play facility. So I'd like to see this formalized so that should there be change in leadership at Mattamy, this is part of what our expectations are.
If I may, Madam Mayor, we will take that information forward. I'm not looking at this point in time any direction. What we'll do is we will reach out to Mattamy, we will solidify what we can, and we will come back to council at a later date and get it on the agenda.
Great, thank you.
Good news. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Is there anything else for the subdivision or you're good? Okay, fantastic. All right, so I believe then we're at the matter of other business. Is that right, Ms. Preston? Other business colleagues in regards to items? No, okay. Notice of motion, I believe we have notice of a notice of motion. Is that right? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, a notice of motion. Actually, it's a motion that I'd like council to consider tonight because it is somewhat time sensitive. I'll read the motion and then I'll give a little bit of background and then if there's any questions, hopefully I can answer them. So the motion would be that council directs staff to report back no later than April 10th regarding refreshment vehicle license and related fee options to accommodate special events and or non-seasonal applications. Now, the reason I'm bringing this without real notice, there's no notice at all, is that both the BIA and NG Pride are making plans for events downtown that they'd like to include food trucks. Their expectation with the licensing, seasonal licensing currently is $250 for non-local, I believe, or even local food trucks for the year to operate. And that kind of licensing covers the cost of processing all the documents that they need, health and safety documents, et cetera, staff time. And as a way of regulating them to some degree, because, you know, there are many food service organizations or businesses that have invested in bricks and mortar. And obviously, if there were no restrictions or no regulations, they could possibly be threatened. But on the other hand, you know, organizations like NG Pride and the BIA that operate as nonprofits look for a great deal to fundraise to make their events self-sustaining. And so they were hoping that staff and council would consider somewhat a lower rate, licensing rate for a day or a weekend, which doesn't currently exist in the refreshment vehicle bylaw. But in the case of NG Pride, they're hoping to have the fee waived completely. So we've got two different requests, both of them, one to reduce the fee, another one to waive the fee. So I think I'd like to toss this back to staff to consider and come back with a report related to this motion. So happy to answer any questions.
Did you read the wording of the motion? Did I miss that?
Yes, you did.
Okay, do you want to
can-
reread it again?
I
please?
will.
Okay, excellent.
That council directs staff to report back no later than April 10th regarding refreshment vehicle license and related fee options to accommodate special events and or non-seasonal applications.
Okay, great. So you were moving that? So are you looking for a seconder now? I presume so? Okay. All right, would anyone like to second that? Yes, Councilor Wilson, you'll second? Okay, great. Thank you. So, and I'm just trying to figure out the notice of motion. We're debating the notice of the motion or the motion? Help me out, Ms. Preston.
It was received today,
Oh, I see.
so I will accept it as a notice of motion for this evening to consider the motion
Great.
for direction tonight. I would just note on a clarification point to the deputy mayor through you, your worship, that if NG Pride wished to have their fees waived, that would be a separate application than what this notice of motion could and will entertain at this table. And that would need to be a separate application to bring forward that they would request that the fees be waived, and that would be heard separately from this, because the direction in this notice of motion is that the fee schedule be brought back to consider those things. And a non-fee could not be considered in a fee schedule for a single event.
Great. Okay, thank you. That being said, we have a motion on the table. Are there any comments or questions apart from what Deputy Mayor has provided?
I'd entertain a friendly amendment if there was a way of addressing waiving a fee in this motion.
Again, I don't believe it's accomplishable in this motion. It would need to be a request that NG Pride makes to the Planning and Building and Bylaw Department, and then they could bring that forward to council for consideration.
Okay, I don't know typically if that protocol exists with building and for that kind of fee waiver. Ms. Martin, has that happened previously?
Not that I'm aware of, your worship. Typically, when we have requests from individuals related to planning or development fees, it would be a matter that would be brought forward to council for their consideration, as they are bylaws of council.
Right. Okay. So then really the request is to come to council then, Ms. President?
Yes.
Okay, fine. All right, so that's something that NG Pride could do in addition to whatever the outcome of this motion is, should they wish.
I just thought there was a way to accommodate it in this motion, but
It
we'll
sounds like
have
our,
to rely on them to bring it forward.
yes,
If NG Pride wished to make that specific request, we could hear it at the same time, perhaps as the fee schedule is addressed at council, so that both matters could be heard similarly in the same meeting.
I think that would be acceptable. Thank
Great.
you.
okay. So why don't you direct NG Pride to move in that direction? Okay, so motion has been moved and seconded. Apart from that, side note, yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. If Deputy Mayor Barclay is bringing the motion forward on behalf of the BIA, would the BIA not have had to come and present their motion themselves as similar as what North Grenville Pride is being asked to do? Or am I confused?
From my perspective, I heard from both organizations and I decided that this would be the fastest way to address
Well,
it.
that's, yeah, and I'm stating the fact as why you're being said you can't do both, but yet you're allowed to do one and not the other. And North Grenville Pride has to come themselves. I don't know.
So on a
I understand the issues
Yeah.
that waiving fees is different than lowering the fees.
Okay,
Fundamentally
all
different.
right.
Correct. And just to clarify through you, your worship, the notice of motion doesn't speak specifically to the BIA. It actually speaks to all special events
All
in North
special event, okay.
Grenville,
Thank you for
Um,
clarification.
just so that it could encompass a many different variety of events in one single motion rather than a specific.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion as it's presented tonight? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? I'll vote in favor. Councillor Sullivan, are
Yes.
you casting a vote? Okay, great. All right, then the motion carries. Thank you. We look forward to the staff reports. Thank you very much. And after any other notices of motion, notices of motion. Okay. Introduction and consideration bylaws. I think we've dealt with that this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Period for questions. Any questions from the four members of the public? We're good. Do you have a question? Okay, you have to come down so you can be on the record, please. And you have to state a name and an address. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. Just and a name and address. I don't know why we have to, do we actually require disclosure of addresses? Do you not, people not have a right to privacy?
Not when you're wishing to speak in a public forum that's minuted.
So the disclosure of a residential address is mandatory under the Municipalities Act?
Yes, especially in a public meeting.
All right, so you'll have to disclose where you live and hope no one comes to visit you later.
Which button?
There you go.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mark Guy. I would like to know why you're not looking at a permanent cover instead of going through a temporary one and then later having to replace that. Like you're getting $50,000, right, from Enbridge. Would you not think that you could build a good size slab with a roof that would hold more than 12 people? Like something like you have in South Gore. Like, could you not,
Mhm.
you know?
So let's ask Mr. Guy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The Enbridge courtyard is one of the shade is one of the components of the
Yeah.
courtyard.
Yeah.
It's not the whole courtyard that we're trying to create there through what we've discussed with Enbridge. We've talked about shade structures. We've talked about park benches. We've even talked about portable barbecue pits, park benches to create an ambiance courtyard area for people. We haven't, what you're discussing is not something that we are considering. And some of it has to do with space limitations within the park itself. With the new amenities that we have there, we created an outdoor rink, as you're probably well aware, and a splash pad.
Mhm.
So we've taken up quite
Can you hear me? I can't hear anything. I have lost the audio. Can you hear me?
Something.
And there are trees planted, correct?
Yeah.
We've actually replaced a number of the trees that we had to unfortunately take down
Mhm.
due to their condition.
Mhm.
So we have planted quite a few new trees in and around the pool, new splash pad area.
Mhm.
Certainly they're not some of them are not, you know, at the height where they're providing lots of shade. However, I think it's important that we replace trees within our parks whenever we lose trees, and certainly people have, I guess we have to be patient that they will grow and create shade at the same time. But in the meantime, yeah, there is, in between that time, there is a lack of shade in certain areas of the park, for sure.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. Okay, that's it. That's all, folks.
Thank
Say
you.
goodnight.
Thank
Which
you.
button do I press?
I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. I think we're okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks. And maybe, you know, maybe the idea of some portable shade structures that could potentially be used. I share the concern about 40 people trying to huddle under limited structures that exist in Riverside. So I hope you're able to give it some more thought as you solidify the plans. Any other questions from members of the public? We're okay? All right. Yep. Councillor Sullivan?
Sorry. Madam Mayor?
Yep.
It's Doreen. I missed, I think we were disconnected for a few minutes, so I missed some of the conversation, and I'm not sure whether Director Guy mentioned that down the road, there's a hope that we will have a more permanent roof structure over the current ice pad that.
Yes, that was mentioned as a hopefully important development down the road. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to closed meeting, confirmatory bylaw. This is that bylaw 1924 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on March 5th, be adopted and passed. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I will move.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Wilson. Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good.
Yes.
And a motion to adjourn at 8:23 p.m. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Strachan, would you like to? Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor, please. Good.
Yes.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, for joining us. We look forward to having you back in North Granville. Take care.